Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I'm Brigid Burke and we are at the 23rd of August. So I think we've got, actually as of tomorrow, I think we've got 1 week left of the whole month. And good morning, Sam. We've got, one more week to August as of tomorrow. And that is just, I don't know, it's just a bit mind-blowing. We are definitely in Virgo season right now. And it just seems... I don't know, it just seems like everything is just kind of moving very, very fast. One of the questions that I had, good morning, Joanne. One of the questions that I had this morning when I woke up, because I was thinking about a lot of different stuff, like a lot of things I'm really wanting to accomplish by the end of 2024, and I'm like thinking, I don't even know how that's going to be possible at this point, because there's just so many barriers to different things, like I would love to get, good morning, Suda. I would love to get moved, get moving on moving. I would love to get going on going back overseas. I want to get going on, there's just other personal milestones that I would like to reach. And right now they just don't seem like they're, like I'm looking at it saying, okay, I'm not sure how I'm going to meet those, Yeah, it is crazy. And, so the message that I got about it this morning was just kind of like saying, it was like the mysteries of, I think the phrasing that it was basically, the word was chicle, it was mysteries from Azrael. It was just kind of like, well, there's things that are going on basically in a space that you, that's not in front of your face, which, again, I talk about this all the time, but it does kind of come around to the idea that even when we are engaged in this kind of work, even when we're engaged in intuitive work and in spiritual work, and even when we have guides and so forth that are telling us or reassuring us, hey, this is happening, this is going to be okay, this is on track, we don't really, if we don't have the thing in front of our eyes, we don't really believe it. We're just kind of like, okay, like it's the old, I'll believe it when I see it. Especially if you're a Taurian, or any kind of earth sign, really. You're just very much like, yeah, okay, but again, a lot of it has to do with what is manifest versus what's not manifest. It's almost like the energy of the, I hate that behind the scenes message. Yeah, I know. Well, you know what, actually, I'll tell you about the behind the scenes message. The one thing that always, I don't want to say it drives me crazy. I mean, it's good to have the message. And I think a lot of times when people come and they want to have a reading, what they want to know is, like, if they're in a situation where that's tense, they're not really sure how it's going to come out, then they reach out to you and they're like, okay, what does this look like? Is this going to come out favorably? Or if they have to make a decision, they may be worried about, it's almost, what's behind door number 1, 2, or 3, right? Like, what's the thing that, what is my best guess here when I don't have enough information in front of me to make a rational decision? Right, to look at something, but yet a decision must be made. So, and again, the thing about doing that through tarot is that yes, you can get an answer, and sometimes the answer is one of the reasons I use cartouche a lot is because I find that cartouche always has the answer right, even if I think it's not. Like, just for example, I was going back and thinking, I don't know if you remember, Azrael had made some kind of prediction about it was going to be end up being like not Trump and Biden, but more like Newsom and Vance. And I was like, but I remember in January, my mother had asked me to read cartouche, and actually because her memory is pretty much gone, like she'll ask me every other week, and I'm like, yeah, I read for you on that last week. But she had asked me to because she was very, very concerned about Trump getting in. And so I said, okay, well, let me just see what it says. Taking my own personal whatever out of it and just saying, okay, what does it say? Basically, it kept pointing. I was like, literally over and over again. I've never used that deck before. You won't find that deck because Murray Hope's Way of Cartouche I got back in 1986, and they don't make it anymore. But it is the deck I learned on back in the 80s, 86, 87. I feel like 87 was the first year I was reading cartouche, 1987. So, yeah, that was, so that's just my deck. I connect with it really well. But Cartouche had said, no, it's gonna be a woman. It's gonna be a woman is what I kept seeing. And I was just like, well, there's no women running. Like at that point, the idea of Harris running was just completely not even imaginable. And I thought maybe it was referring to Nikki Haley. Maybe she was gonna get the nomination or something. Because at that point, primaries hadn't started or anything. So yeah, it's interesting how that, so, you know what I mean? So, I mean, again, we still haven't gotten through November and January and all that, so we still don't know the answer to that. But I asked recently, I said to him, are you still wedded to the idea of Newsom? He said no. Basically, what I got was that was something that I think was actually on the table that maybe none of us actually saw, and maybe it was still a very real possibility or a very real likelihood, but something shifted, and of course there was so much momentum behind Kamala Harris now that I think they just kind of said, okay, forget that. She's the nominee, forget that, So that's because now they're saying, yeah, it's going to be her on the Democratic side, but they're still saying it's not going to be Trump. So yeah, that still remains to be seen. Anyway, point just being about reading cards and being able to see a future event based on the cards. And a lot of time we do that because, yeah, we want to know the outcome of things. And I'm just as, I don't even want to use the word guilty. I mean, when we don't have enough solid logical information, then that's when we try to use those other senses to get other information, right? I noticed as a few of you are taking my intuitive development class this weekend, so that's very cool. And yeah, I've got a nice whole thing presented for this weekend. This is just kind of an aside. I think this week what we're covering is we're kind of going over the basics of what intuition is, what it looks like. The DNC messaging is very energizing. It is, isn't it? I mean, yeah. I mean, it's just like, I don't normally watch political conventions and things, but I'm finding myself watching the different speeches. And I think, what was it? It was Tim Walz's speech, actually, with his son, when his son stood up and did that. I mean, that's just like, I think Ann Coulter made some kind of a stupid comment, and I'm just like, will you just crawl back to the rock you came from? I swear to God, he was just, that was just like, I think even the MSNBC anchors, I think, were like crying their eyes out, because it was just that kind of a thing. Because I think his son is nonverbal or something, and it was just, I mean, to me, I don't care what anyone's political affiliation is. I mean, that was just a really moving thing. And I mean, it definitely showed the kind of relationship between father and son, you know what I mean? That there was a definite like love there, which I think is just, we talk so much about toxic masculinity and stuff like that. It's like very good to see something that's not toxic. I mean, his daughters were the same way. I mean, it was just like, that's our dad and we love him, like that was just something that really, I think, kind of stood out to me in that. But anyway, so when we're trying to make things manifest, we don't necessarily, when we don't have all the information, then we reach out. And I was talking about intuitive development class. That's right. That's where I was. And yeah, so we're going to be talking about some of the basics of that this week. We're going to talk about blocks to intuition. And we're also going to be talking about, and we're also going to do this, like there's a little test that I had learned from one of my, it pulled at the heartstrings. Yes, it definitely did. I'm going to be in the intuitive development class. I'm going to be looking at those things about blocks and also about grounding and protection. And there is a little test that I had learned in one of my other psychic development classes that I'm going to use here about trying to figure out which of the we're going to call them extra senses, but they're just the ones, the undeveloped senses. Which one's probably the strongest? Will you be doing this class again? I can't make it due to the zone finance situation currently. Probably. I probably will offer it. I'm going to be off right now. The Sundays are what works for me just because of some other logistics with family stuff and things. Because usually I need to leave kind of Sunday. The earlier part of the day, sometimes I need to leave open. So that's the only reason. Yeah, and I'm sorry, because I know, because you're not the only one in England who would love to take this class, and it's like, but it would be like 9 o'clock at night. So, plus whatever other logistics. So yeah, I mean, I'm offering the 10-week now. It'll probably be a running thing, actually. I'll probably offer this and then another time. But I also am opening the school. I do actually have all the components in the script for the Kickstarter video. So that's all coming together. And so we're going to see how everything shakes out with the school as well. and how that all comes together. So I guess point being is I'm not sure if I want to see where that's going to fit in. And I know Corinna wants me to offer some more stuff in person at her store. Something that I'm like in the winter time, as we're getting towards winter, I'm a little weird about doing, because I don't want to be in a situation, especially I don't want to be driving in the dark at night in that section, which is very hilly. I don't want to be coming home in that. I would rather be doing something like on a Saturday afternoon or something, when it's sunny out and we can see where things are going. We don't have to worry about snow, like that kind of a thing. So, I don't know. Basically I've got a lot of requests to do certain things. So I'm trying to figure out where that's all going to fit in the rest of this year. That's kind of what I was starting with, because I'm trying to think about, well, what are the bigger goals that I have? What is it that I want to do? And I just feel like, okay, certain things are moving, but other things I just feel like I'm kind of standing still. And it's a matter of trying to manifest things. So we sometimes will contact our intuitive knowing. And I was just making the mini plug for the class in there, because that's what we're talking about. And each class we're going to do like a kind of an exercise. I think this one we're going to be doing what they call the old Rhine exercises from the Rhine Institute, just as kind of a warm-up kind of a thing. And then we'll see what happens, the following week. People can take them as they're able. So the thing that came up for me was, there's a lot around the influence of, you'd hate where I live. I hate driving at night. I think if you live anywhere near mountains, I don't do mountains. I just don't do them at all. Even when my driving was good, I don't do mountains, because now you've got the driving and the heights factor put together, and the fact that some mountain roads, they don't really have a guardrail or anything, or it's one lane and somebody comes towards you and no. Anyway, it's in the mountains, literally. Yeah, exactly. Mountains are beautiful, but somebody would have to drive me there. I'm not going up there myself. So anyway, so what we're talking about, the thing that came up today was kind of that influence of the tower, which I think I've talked about before. But I think even more than the tower, because the tower is that thing that shakes everything up. And that's the kind of thing that we're usually afraid of. We have this this sense of when other things are uncertain, we kind of will have, come and get you, thank you, thank you. We probably have to. There'd be this thing in the where we have this core, this certain things that we it's almost like the rock that we cling to, I guess maybe is the best way to put it. We'll have the rock that we cling to, and the question is, sometimes it's okay, sometimes you have to stop clinging to the rock and allow yourself to kind of be carried to what's next. If we think of something as being in a storm, we want to cling to the rock, right? But it kind of goes back to the old analogy of the oak tree versus the willow tree. It's if you're too solid in something, if you're fighting against the forces that are pushing you too hard, it could break you. If you allow yourself to bend, you may have a better chance of surviving. This is not a great analogy, and I realize this, but one of the reasons that drunk drivers often survive accidents is because they're so loose. Normally, if you think you're going to come on a collision with somebody, you would do this, right? Because they're so fluid, a lot of times you could even have the whole car things, but they just kind of just flow out because that has removed their resistance. Now, this is not me advocating drunk driving, okay? But the point being is that we're not relaxed in these situations. We're always kind of on guard. We're always looking around and thinking, I have to, I have to be planned. I have to be prepared for everything. Or this thing is not coming up. This means, it's not going to happen. Or saying we tend to, even when we have that intuitive knowledge, we tend to look at the future with the point of view of strictly coming from the present. And when I say, and yes, we always talk about how good it is to live in the present, which is another reason that maybe we shouldn't project too far into the future. But understanding that plans sometimes need to be made. You sometimes have to understand when you're making plans that you don't necessarily have all the pieces for that plan. So unless you're planning to execute it immediately, That's the other thing too. A lot of times we don't allow time for things to develop. Some things, if you have an emergency, you got to deal with it right then and there, right? But if we're trying to plan for the future, the problem is there's so many intervening variables that whatever plan you have has to be flexible. And and sometimes when we're jazzed up for something, we're like, okay, I got to do this right now. I want to accomplish this today. In 1 week, I want to accomplish, 10 years worth of stuff. And sometimes when you have a lot of fire energy, you can be like that. You're just like, yeah, I got to get all this done. I got to get all this done. But the problem is that's not the way anything works. We don't, life does not progress from A to B to C to D. Oh, I hit this milestone, now I hit this milestone. And yeah, there may be some level of regularity, but typically speaking, most of us know, and I've said this before, that it's almost like being on one of those board games like Candyland, where you're like, that's one I always think of from kindergarten, where, you pick the color and then it's like you had to move to that square. Or sometimes it would say move 7 steps back. Or like you suddenly find yourself jumping far ahead, or all of a sudden you'd find yourself back at the beginning. It's that kind of a thing. It's the kind of thing that the labyrinth actually meditation tries to kind of show you. Because when you enter a labyrinth, a traditional labyrinth, you often walk in to the entrance, and as you're going around, like the center is almost right in front of you. Like the end almost seems like it's right there. But then you find yourself being taken all the way this way, and then you're taken all the way this way. It's like you're kind of going in circles until finally you reach that center. But it's not even just going in a circle like this. It's just, you're kind of here, and then you're there, and then you're here, then you're close, then you're far. And that's really kind of the way life works. It's never a straight line. So what will happen is things will go along the same, and then all of a sudden a whole bunch of changes will come in. And that's kind of the influence that I'm thinking about with regard to the outer planets, okay? Because the outer planets, somebody asked me about this in the Chiron class, because they were asking me about the orbit of Chiron. Sources playing the game. Well, yes, yeah, 100%. It's a game. It's a game. Joanne didn't say that's me, Gemini battling Taurus. It's like 3 people in my head with Taurus trying to keep everything in check. And a lot of times that's why we have the people like us who have very high energy. Like in your case, Joanne, you've got a lot of that air energy because you're right on Gemini. With me, I also have the Aries energy because I'm right on the edge of Taurus on the other side. So it's almost like you're in Taurus by a certain degree just to kind of keep you from floating away. Or flying away, or just being completely ungrounded and unable to do anything. Like Taurus is that energy of manifestation. But right now with Uranus and Taurus, it's like it's there's that shift and that upset of everything. And but the outer planets, if we look at if we get past Saturn, okay, then you get into the Chiron orbits between Saturn and Uranus, and that also has an erratic orbit, okay, and it actually has rings too, like Saturn, which is interesting. And Chiron is one of those things you want to talk about a liminal object. I mean, it's like it's a comet, it's an asteroid, and it also functions a little bit like a minor planet too. And so you'll see things, because I've seen things, I'll be like, oh, somebody says it's an asteroid. Oh, no, wait, I'm wrong. It's actually a comet. No, it's actually both. It's 2060 Chiron and it's 95P Chiron. They're both, it's classified as 2 different objects at the same time. It's a weird thing that manifests there. And then Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, those are all planets, if we look at them astrologically, that have to do with the way, like Uranus, again, has to do with unpredictability, right? Has to do with that and its orbit is also very unpredictable. Like the way that it moves forward and retrogrades it's bizarre. Neptune is quite similar, and they don't necessarily have the same kinds of orbits. They're kind of like, their orbits are weird if you actually were going to plot them. And that's why you'll see during the year they're moving forward, now they're retrograding, now they're moving forward, now they're retrograding. And people will say, oh, what's the regular pattern of that? And it's like, well, there isn't exactly one. I mean, you can look at an ephemeris and you can see when those patterns are going to come in, but it's not in any kind of like we go around the sun over 365 days, right? The Earth moves around the sun, moves. We don't start moving backwards when we go between summer and winter. The axis tilts. Okay, so it's summer in one place and winter in another place, and vice versa. So it's not, we're used to that regularity. The other is not, these orbits are not regular. And Pluto also, which some people also claim is not a planet, but it isn't a planet. It does have a function in astrology, so it functions as a planet. But what do all these planets stand for? I mean, Uranus is that unexpected, that unpredictability, that bomb that gets dropped in the middle of everything that you're doing. Neptune has to do with that space that's very 12th house oriented. It's that space where we can have very fertile imagination. We talked about creativity yesterday, right? Where you can be very imaginative, and this is where new possibilities and new potential and new ideas. But Neptune can also be the planet where things are cloudy and unclear and delusional. So it's like the two sides of that coin, because if you all those ideas, you don't have anything to ground and manifest them, then they're just floating in the ether. Part of the reason that we do grounding and we deal with grounding is because you want to make sure that you can take that material and put it into, do something with it. You could look out in nature. You could look out at a field of a particular herb. Like, for example, I walk around my yard and I must have planted lemon balm at some point because it shoots up in all kinds of weird places in my yard. But if I just don't harvest it or do anything with it, then it's just there. You know what I mean? It's something that's there. It may be there organically. It may be there. There may be other reasons why certain things are there or where they are. But we don't. But the question is, what do we do with it? What do we do with it? And we don't necessarily do stuff. Do something with everything. But another thing that I was, so finding here. And one of the challenges, I think, of these outer planets, and Pluto, of course, having to do with what's in shadow. Like, Pluto is Hades. He's king of the underworld, right? So this is about what's in shadow. Pluto tells us, what's hidden, maybe what's been hidden in other lifetimes, what's been hidden in other spaces. And that equally, like some of these other planets, can show up as kind of a karmic challenge of some kind. But they're all challenging to us because they're unpredictable. We like predictability. We like regularity. And it's like I was saying, creativity needs some kind of a structure. You have the thing and you need to put it in something. It doesn't have to be the standard structure or the same old one that everybody has, but there needs to be some kind of a structure. So that's really where the intellect and the reason and things come in, because you want to figure out, okay, well, or even just taking a creative idea and saying, oh, I'm thinking I can do this, this, and this, and then actually taking the stuff and doing this, this, and this, whether you're doing it virtually, depending on what the idea is. I mean, it can manifest in a lot of ways. It can manifest in a very physical way. It can be, oh, I want to reach out to this person and see if I can do this. So it's a matter of making that email. Like right now, I'm trying to get this school together. It's a matter of getting this Kickstarter together. So I'm trying to put together a video that talks about all the pieces and all of the different faculty and everything. And so I was reaching out yesterday to people to get the last pieces together of what I needed. And I'd written a whole script, which I have to do. And then I have to do all the video editing in between today, because I'm teaching a Reiki 2 class tomorrow, so I have to pop by Milford to get the stuff settled on that. Because I know, so I'm trying to fit everything in, but there's a lot of this chaos, and I think in the midst of it, I'm kind of you can kind of lose, you end up losing sight of the goals. It's kind of like being on a path and then suddenly kind of being diverted off, and you're kind of trying to find your way back onto it, so to speak. But one thing I can say, like just thinking about it, if I just think about Uranus and Taurus, because that's the experience that I have, is that if I think about when this started in 2019, what I found is that different beliefs and ideas I had about my life, about my sense of security, and about who I was and what I needed. If I look at where I was in 2019 and I look at where I am now, they're very different ideas. Back then I would have said, oh, I need, X number of $1,000s a month, or otherwise I totally can't make it. I'm going to have to sell my house. I'm going to have to move back in with mom. I'm going to fail. You know what I mean? And what I'm finding is that when I would just kind of say, okay, you know what, I'm going to yield to certain things that you valued and thought were so important aren't so important. You know what? Sometimes you can be a little late with things. Sometimes you can be this, and like the world's not going to collapse on you. And what I find is just that if I just leave it alone and keep doing my work, that somehow, like, okay, the money comes in. Now maybe it's just enough to cover what I need, but the money comes in. And it's kind of saying, like, at the right time, that all shifts. But I went through a whole period of time. Like, I'm somebody who really, I really need financial stability. I'm like, you know, that's my Taurian thing. I really want, I mean, I think most people want that, right? But it's just like, that's a particular thing that I have. And when I don't have it, like, that's like, that was always like a major, like, freak out thing for me. And I'm just finding now that if I look at something and say, okay, I'm not sure if I have enough to the end of the month, but I'm not going to worry about it. And then all of a sudden, like, people will start booking things at random that I didn't expect. And then all of a sudden someone will jump in and, you know, somehow it just materializes. And it's not something that's planned. It's not a regular paycheck. It's not something that plans. The gods are never early, but they're always on time. Yeah, exactly. And things show up when they need to show up. But we often think, no, it has to be here by this date. I have to do this by this date. In other words, Uranus sometimes is one of those influences that's trying to break your stranglehold on the process and letting things just happen. Because that's when, you know, because things do go in cycles. And because bottom line is, even if you have a job, even if you say, no, I'm going to be at this job, I'm going to stay at this job for X number of years, and then I'm going to look at my retirement, and it's going to build up by this much amount of money, and blah, blah, blah. You know, you can have all of those plans, and then all of a sudden you get laid off. Or all of a sudden, this actually happened to a coworker of mine. They really kind of wanted to leave the job, but just said, this bank card cat, this bank card cat, yeah, exactly. You kind of have to let go, because I know what you were talking about. Yeah, because what are you going to do? There's nothing you can do when that happens. And that actually is another good point, because things will come in and they just happen. They don't, and then it's like, you know, or you have a plan, or you meet an obstacle and you think you know how you're going to get over that obstacle, and then something else happens, and after a while you're just like, okay, you know what? This is the result that I feel like I really need, but I can't get it. So, you know, give it up, you know? But I was saying about this person that I worked with, they had said, well, I'm going to stay in this job X number of years, because my retirement, you know, I can build up X number of dollars by this. Like, they were very, very methodical and very logical about how they were doing their investments and everything else. And then COVID hit. And when COVID hit, with the university I used to work for, they used to provide, I think they matched at 11%, okay, when you were there a certain number of years. I think it was, I think if you were in the professional Senate, you got it after, was it a year? I think union members had to wait a little longer for that because of, I don't know, there was some trade-off there. But basically, after a certain number of years, your return was 11%. If you were there, maybe it was 5 years, I can't remember. But in any case, before that, I think they were doing like a 3% match, and then they jumped to an 11% match, okay? Which, of course, I think I've blown through all that already. But you had this 11% match on your retirement account. And it's a very good one. It's the New Jersey Teachers one. It's a really, really good one. And so this person had already kind of done the calculations and said, oh, okay, by this date, I'll have this amount of money, and that's the amount that I will feel comfortable retiring on. And then when COVID hit, the university president said, okay, well, if you've been here less than 5 years, we're dropping your contributions to 1% to save money. I mean, not mine. I think mine got dropped to like 8, I think, because I had been there long enough. But this person, and he's like, well, that F's up my entire plan. You know what I mean? Like, it's not, and so then it just almost feels like, yeah, like you're hopeless. Like, okay. I mean, just try to imagine a 1%, match. And I think they finally have restored it to where it was, but he lost like 5 years on that or something, you know, and it was a big bone of contention. And we understood that with COVID, like, enrollments weren't the same, and people had to be at home, and then there was all these kinds of things that they have to do. Yeah, like, what's the point? Exactly. Well, that's like just investing in your regular bank account. There used to be a time when bank accounts gave you interest, like where you could get, you could get a decent interest rate return on your savings. And now they're like, oh, great introductory rate, you get 2%. I'm like, ooh, thanks. I won't spend it all in one place. So it's just, yeah. I mean, if you're going to invest, and if your plans are around investments, planning around investments, it kind of goes back to what I was just saying about economies and the fact that that's just all our agreed upon things. The stock market is just one of those things. We do everything based on speculation in this culture. That's kind of like the hallmark of capitalism, that you invest in something and then if the stock market increases your earnings, but then if we have a bad year and the Dow drops or whatever, then, oh my God, I've just lost $20,000 of savings. Like, it's almost like we live by gambling. Speaking of games, right? It's just so interesting. But that's the way the serious person has to plan. And I'm like, but you're planning by continually playing with chance, I mean, I know that there are some more solid investments that people can make that are, but they're usually what they call slow growths, your money markets and stuff like that. Those kinds of accounts, they're slow growth. But they say, well, you can make money faster by doing it this way. So yeah, I don't know. It's funny, for all the things that we think of as solid and stable, we take a lot of gambles all the time. But oftentimes our values are around certain things. And, when we have to, these influences come in from the outer planets that either try to make us think differently about something, that maybe confuse for us things that we thought were clear. I was certain that this was this way, and then it can just totally mess us up, and then we don't know the way forward. Which is why a Neptune can sometimes be associated with even depressive states and things, because, don't gamble your values away, yeah. But you'll find that a lot of times that they're tested in these kinds of situations. And you can't, with regard to, the stock market and everything too, it's just like, I don't know, it's not a thing I obsess over. I have a pretty solid account. I have a pension, so that comes from the state of New Jersey that I don't get now, but that I'm eligible for. And then right now that's pretty much what I've got. But sometimes things happen, and the things that we feel we're supposed to do, they just go away. They can evaporate in front of our eyes. They can just change all of a sudden. Just generally trust and testing values, not stock. Oh yeah, not stocks necessarily. Yeah, well that's it. And the question becomes too, though, when are we being prompted to change something? As well, because if we think that there is one steady way that we have to do things, and that keeps getting punched every time we try to. Sometimes it's not so much that we have to, it varies. Sometimes it's not that we need to try to stand firm in something. It may be that we need to let something go and let it come back to us again too. It's what I have found with Uranus and Taurus is that it's completely changed a lot of my relationship to money in particular, because I'm like, okay, it's more of I'm going to get what I need, and not that, if I don't have this many thousands of dollars in my bank account, I can't function. Because greed can be a thing too. A lot of times it's not that people shouldn't be, because people will talk about abundance attitude, right? They'll say, you shouldn't think small. You shouldn't think you should just have as much as you need. You should be able to think, I deserve to have $10 million or whatever, But, which is fine. I mean, there's no reason that you can't, say, okay, that's, set an intention like that. But the reality is often that the more that we have, the more that we need. It's like you reach a point where you make, let's just say you started out making $30,000 a year. And then you say, well, no, that's not enough. I need $50,000 a year. Then you make 50 and you're like, well, that's not enough. And part of it too is because inflation and stuff. I mean, there is a real thing behind that. But then you make 70 and then you make 100 and then you're like, yeah, but this is still not enough. It's just like there's never enough. You know what I mean? And I feel almost like sometimes these things are here to show you like, okay, forget about this. I never have enough. What do you actually need? I feel like sometimes that's the energy or the message there. What do you actually need? Yeah, and it's funny that the miser card comes up right in the center of the reading here, right? Because I feel like there's, Yeah, this is interesting. There's this interesting, I just feel like when things come in and mess things up, first of all, it's reminding us of what I've said. The underpinning of everything is chaos. We are not living in a universe where, where everything is, I mean, there's an apparent order to things, but there's also a disorder to things. And we have this mythology, this way of thinking that tells us that disorder needs to be conquered or gotten rid of. I think I talked about that more over on Catonia last week with talking about Leviathan. The idea that chaos is something that we need to banish forever. But it's like, just like when we'll say, like, there's certain mysteries, but eventually science will get to all of them. No, it won't, because the mystery is kind of infinite. And like I said, Chick-fil-A was the first word I got this morning, mystery. It's like, there's mysteries to things, and we have to know, and we not only have to know what the outcome is, we want to know the how and the steps and how it's going to get there. So if I say to somebody, if somebody's having financial troubles and I do a reading and I say, okay, well, your financial troubles are going to be solved. Yes, but I need to know how. I need to know all the steps. Now, obviously, yes, the question you might want to be is what action should you take? What should you do? But sometimes it just tells them you just kind of have to float along and see what happens. And nobody likes that answer. It's kind of like being adrift in the ocean and going, I'm looking for something. I'm looking for something solid to be on. But sometimes we are in a place where we just need to float along. And that's kind of a scary thing. But that's why I think there's this whole thing about trying to stay in the present again. So let's look at our reading, because I think this illustrates what I'm trying to say. Yeah, we start with this Miser card. Now, this is the Four of Pentacles, okay? And you see you have this woman who is kind of overly made up, and she's older, and she's like got all these jewels and stuff, and she's got this wall built, like she's just hanging on to it. And she does not have a very pleasant look on her face, and she's looking like, yeah, you're not going to take what's mine. Okay, I'm hanging on to what's mine. All of this material stuff I'm going to hang on to, it's mine. There's one thing you'll also hear too is sometimes you have to like we were talking about yesterday, you've got to have the empty space in order for something to come in. You want stuff in your house, you just keep acquiring and acquiring stuff. At some point you need to clear everything out if you want to have a fresh start. If you want to think about something in a new way, you've got to clear the space of the old. This is an energy of, no, I'm not letting go. Okay? And the inner feeling of which we're unaware is the moment-to-moment card. This is the card of being in the present. This is the Two of Pentacles. And it's and the Two of Pentacles is a card of juggling. It's a card of, you see the Two Pentacles in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, there's somebody juggling, in the Leminskit actually, in that flow, is juggling the Two Pentacles, because it's really about being in the flow of things, juggling different things, multitasking, dealing with different stuff, but being in the flow. It's not something, it's kind of, some people interpret that card as, oh, well, you can't keep all those balls in the air forever. Is being comfortable with the unknown a mark of maturity? Well, it's funny you say that, because the external card is maturity, okay? I should have said that. The external feeling of which we're away. I think being comfortable with the unknown is something that comes from experience. Because it's something that comes from experience, because initially, when you don't know how to do something, think about the first time you ever do something, right? You want somebody to give you a template. You want somebody to say, okay, give me some steps so I can try this. When you're cooking, the first time you follow the recipe exactly, and after you've done it enough times, you're like, yeah, I don't need the recipe. I know I need a little more of this and I need that. Like, we know how we need to do it. We have the experience. We don't need to always rigidly follow things step by step, right? But a lot of times when we're starting out, we're looking for an example, or we're looking for a template, rather than trying to just invent, the whole don't reinvent the wheel. You know what I mean? We kind of have that thing. But then sometimes we can still cling to that and say, well, that's the right way to do things. This is what I have to do. And experience allows us to go with control, go with the flow to a certain degree. Because, and that's actually also the function of failure too. When we do something and we say, oh, that should have worked and it didn't. Okay, well, now I have to try to think about it differently. Maybe I need to throw the template away. Or maybe I just need to let go of things. I've known people who, when they want to get involved in a business and so forth, they think they don't want to make any investments because they say, but what if it doesn't work out? Then that's money I've spent and I haven't gotten anything back on it. I'm like, yeah, but if you don't spend that money, you're not, you have to put something out there to get something back. You can't just say, well, I'm going to. It's a lot of corporations do this. What was it? There was that Project Biff, big improvements for free. It's like, yeah, we want to do all this stuff, but you're going to have to figure out a way to do it with no money. Well, maybe you can. Maybe you can find out a way to do something that way. But a lot of times when you're building stuff, like if you're building a business, there's a certain amount of investment that you have to do. There's certain things I have to invest in every month, certain things that I need, because otherwise, I have to pay for insurances. I have to pay for Zoom. I have to pay for there's stuff I have to pay for so that I can do what I'm doing, and you can't just be like, well, I'm not going to pay for any of that stuff, but somehow I'm going to still do my business. It's like, well, you gotta do that somewhere. You can't be so afraid. You can't be saying like, no, I have to hang on to what I've got. And I often see this sometimes in people who actually have a lot going for them, who have all of the things that they need. They have the roof over their head. They have the health insurance. They have everything that they need, and they may or may not even have a super high salary, but they have everything they need. But they're afraid that if they take any kind of risk with what they have, that they're going to lose everything. And it's really not necessarily. It's this Nine of Swords energy, which is sorrow. There's often this feeling that we are, this is, to me, Nine of Swords is catastrophizing. It's looking at the outcome and assuming that the worst is going to happen, okay? That anytime things are out of control and I don't know what's going on, that means the worst thing is happening, right? Oh my God, everything's going to fail. I'm going to be on the street begging. I'm going to be this and that. And it's I would say that's almost, I'd probably say the probability is against that happening for a lot of people who are in this position. People often are in a better position than what they think they are. Unfounded fear of loss. Yeah, because, but part of that comes from that conditioning that says to us, no, you keep having to have more and more and more. If you risk anything, if you risk your money on it, if you do this, if you do that, then somehow you are, oh, you're going to fail. You're being foolish. You're going to lose everything, but sometimes when life presents you with certain things. I always think about something my sister used to talk about, because when she was living in Cali, Cali is a very expensive place to live. She was, even in spite of the incomes that she and her husband had, it was just like, and she was like, okay, I'm going to get this paid off and I'm going to get this. And then something would come, some catastrophe would come. And it's like, oh my God, now I got to throw thousands of dollars into this. And she's like, why can I never get ahead? And it's like, sometimes those things, if you're very rigid about, I'm just going to stay right here because I need to make sure that I'm hanging on to this thing that I have. And it doesn't even just have to be about money. It can be about other things too. But our outcome card here is breakthrough. Okay, now technically this is the Justice card, but breakthrough is about seeing the truth of something. Okay, you have a breakthrough where you realize that all of these little scripts that we trap ourselves in, that we cannot let go of, where we know we need to make a move forward, but we're like, yeah, but I can't let go of this. I can't let go of that. Oh no, I have to have that thing. This is so illuminating. Thank you so much. Okay, good. Well, good. You're welcome. I'm glad that it is. I mean, it's, but it's just, we have to, a lot of times we have to go through that process and that anxiety. I remember the first time I quit my job and I was like laying there at night thinking, oh my God, and I still had I had 2 years of still a lot of money coming in every month, from investments and stuff. So I was actually going to be okay financially. I wasn't, but the idea of oh my God, if my business doesn't succeed tomorrow, everything's going to fail. And over time, when you go through these things and see, oh, you know what? I still have my house. I still have this. I still have that. Oh yeah, that I didn't do this thing and I thought, oh, the world's going to end, but it didn't end. You start to see the truth of things. And so then you're able to start to let go. You're starting to let go of the idea of, no, it all must be done in this way. I must have, this, or this, or it's not going to work. A lot of times we, even our sense of what we need or what we need to keep or what we're going to empty, what we're, what we must have or what we must hang on to. It's almost like the universe is saying, no, let go of that. And sometimes, and also you find that when you let go of things, more comes back to you. It's like the idea of when you share with others, they say, you will always end up having enough, So so there's this idea of not, a lot of times I feel like these changes are meant to kind of break you out of that bubble and make you see what the bigger possibilities are. And our card for today that I pulled from the Black Moon astrology is the Sun card. Okay, so the sun is actually a very good, we'll call it an omen, because the sun here indicates that something being recognized for something or something being illuminated. So I think for a lot of people who have been kind of hit by this, like the path forward is going to make itself apparent. It's funny you say illuminating because that's what came up. The sun, it's going to illuminate something. It's going to illuminate the path forward. So so anyway, I feel like this live stream was a little bit chaotic because I was kind of back and forth, but the theme was kind of this, these outer planet influences, this idea of that. Oh, you're welcome. And, so I don't know. So I feel like what's kind of being driven home is like, okay, we get to a point, and I think also because, I love today's reading. Thank you. Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, and it's funny because it's, we have this, there's this whole thing of what, when we can't see it in front of us, kind of going back to where I started. You can't see something that's in front of you and therefore you assume it's not happening. Okay? But that doesn't mean that things aren't happening. Things fall into place at the right time. The right things come to you at the right time, but you have to open up to that level of trust. And that's part of it. Like, when after a while, you see the thing over and over again and realize, no, it's not going to sink you. No, it's not the end of the world. Yes, there is another solution. Yes, there is another way to do this. The more experience you have, the less daunting those things become. The less sleep you're going to lose over things that maybe, like I lose a lot less sleep over things I would have when I first quit my job in 2021 than when I do now. It's just, but it takes time, and oftentimes it also means a lot of, it can mean a lot of anxiety and a lot of angst. And a lot of people are saying like, well, I don't want to go through the anxiety and the angst. That's your Four of Pentacles. I'm like, I feel you on that. I don't want to go through it either. But sometimes, and technically we don't need to do that, but it's because we haven't learned to trust. So it's almost like this is its way of saying, come on, just get out there and see. You're going to see it's going to be okay. So anyway, I hope that that makes sense to people. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll be back tomorrow morning before I have to go teach my Reiki class. So everybody have a good weekend. I'm looking forward to some of you joining me for intuitive development this weekend, we'll catch up soon. Take care.